that took priority above everything else. God's love is powerful. And God's love for us is our example. And that's where we start with our first verses. I remember a story from when I was a youth. We used to pass around a mic during prayer time, and people would stand up and share their prayers. And this older gentleman, who had to have been in his 70s or 80s, I was much younger, so my age frame is a little off, but I would bet he was in his 70s or 80s. Stood up. This very rough and gruff man, who I never seen smile, broke down in tears. He said, "I want to share a little bit about God's love and God's patience with me." And he shared this story of this grudge he had had with this man for the majority of his life, for over 50 years of his life. A deep hate he had for this man. He didn't go into the specifics, but said he carried around this hate with him for years, and it ate at him, and it tore him apart, but he just could not forgive. And then one day, he said one day, and only by the grace of God, he found that ability to forgive, but not only forgive, to love this man. And that was just a very powerful testimony to God's patience and love for us, and for our ability to embrace that love and share it with others. It's one of those stories that will forever be with me. This man who continued to live out of this negative space, live out this hate, this anger, he was now able to love. As we continue through our scripture about God's love and goodness, we continue to see more about Jesus and how he is to be our simple answer to all of our questions about love, and how God loved us so much that Jesus was here to teach us as our example. Jesus who loved every last one. Jesus who did not live out of fear, but lived out of love. Even when he feared or doubted or questioned, he knew that God's love was more important and more powerful, and that is how he lived his life. Even when he sat in his darkest hours praying to God, he knew what was the most powerful component of it all was God's love. He was able to set aside that fear as he faced those who would persecute him, those who would beat him, who would mock him, those who would deny him and betray him. He set all the fear aside so that we could know love and salvation. And as we continue on through our scripture towards the end, it talks how we are to take these examples and to live out of love and not out of fear. And if we live out of fear, we are doing it all wrong. And we do not truly know God if we are living out of fear and not living into love. And I shared this, again, I've been meditating over this scripture for a few weeks now, and I shared this same scripture with the college students at TCU. I was blessed to have the opportunity to go and lead a Bible study with the disciples on campus there, and we had some, Beth Cheney was there, one of our TCU students, and many other students that I've known through the camping program were there, and it was good to see a room filled with familiar faces and some new faces, and watch them as they filled with excitement at the Chicken Express that I brought to feed them all lunch. But after they filled their plates and we sat down to have a holy meal, because you know what Jesus did a lot of? He ate a lot. And let me tell you, these college kids, they ate a lot. And we sat down and we had our meal and we shared in this scripture. And what an opportunity to talk about a scripture that involves love and fear and our call to be a Christian and pushing that fear aside. When this happened the day after the TCU students and faculty had a march on their campus in response to all that is going on in the world surrounding refugees. TCU has a large and diverse population, diverse in faith traditions. TCU allows and invites and embraces all people on campus. They want a higher education and opportunity to help create young leaders of the world. And they stood up and these students marched and said, all are welcome here. All are welcome here. You will be safe here. You will be valued here. Your voices will be heard here. And we are not going to embrace hate, but we are going to embrace love. And they shared their stories. They shared their experiences. And one student raised his hand and he said, I was filled with anxiety. I was filled with fear. I was fearful of what people might think that disagreed with me. I was fearful to stand up and use my voice because I was fearful of harm that might come to me, or those people who might troll me on the internet, or those people who might mock me and make fun of me on the internet later. Because just because this was a powerful, powerful march of justice didn't mean that there wouldn't be people on the internet that would later respond in really harsh ways. But he said, I realized that my fear, my anxiety is nothing in comparison to what some of these other people are experiencing. And I must live out of love and put my fear aside. And they talked about how their friends, their Muslim friends, their student association there stood a little bit taller the next day, knowing that they were surrounded by love, knowing that they could put their fear aside, knowing that they were at a place where they were invited, where they were welcome. That was a moment where you had to put fear aside and live out of love. That is a moment where we are caring for our brothers and sisters. That is a moment when we become the body of God here on earth, embodying that love. Disciples of Christ from the very beginning have been seekers of justice. We are a movement for wholeness. And all of this, I truly believe, comes from a place of love. We can all do something. We are all called to do something. And whatever that calling is must come from a place of love. To tie us back to Jimmy Walker's sermon last week, we are to flaunt our faith, not hide it, not put it under a bushel or a bowl, but to let it shine. We are to be God's love in the world for everyone, no matter how hard, no matter how much fear or anxiety, no matter how many unknowns there are. We are called to be that love because God is love. All praise to the Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer.